Welcome to the Love Deep Lab podcast, helping you integrate sex, sexiness, sacredness, and science in your life and your bedroom. And now, your host, Dr. Stormy.
Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Stormy. Welcome to the Love Deep Lab podcast. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in today. And are you like me? You have wild dreams and you don't know what to make of them? Or have you ever wondered how your dreams can point you in the direction of your own inner work? Or maybe you simply just are curious about dreams. Then today's episode is for you, because today's episode is all about dreams and the beautiful, magical world of our dreamscape. Today, I have the honor of having an incredible guest with us, Dr. Jonathan Hyland, aka the Dreams Doctor. Jonathan is a dear friend, a very long time dear friend of mine. He's also received his doctorate in depth psychology, aka analytical psychology, from Pacifica Graduate Institute. He first developed his methodology of archetypal dreamwork through his dissertation, in which he explored his experiences of anxiety as embodied experiences of the unconscious. After teaching depth psychology at the collegiate and corporate level for 6 years, and finally returning to his own jungian analysis, Jonathan formalized his methodology as a practice of dreamwork that he could offer to individuals. Dreamwork is a process in which one uses their dreams as a lens to identify archetypal themes in their life. The archetypal themes, in turn, when recognized, activate a unique kind of dreaming that customizes a path of transformation for the individual. Excited to have Jonathan here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Dreams Doctor.
Hi.
Like I mentioned, Jonathan is a very longtime dear friend of mine, so it's just super sweet to have him on the podcast with us today. So thanks for being here.
So glad to be here.
We're just going to kind of dive right in. So Jonathan, I'm going to just start with asking why your love and dedication to dreams.
Well, it's like waking up with this art, that you didn't create. It's like this, and I always thought that was intuitively, I just always felt like that was like this incredible treasure that no one's really talking about or referencing. That there's this ornate narrative, this visual story that's unique about you. And so I just started writing them down as soon as I could, and just as almost like as an art historian, like I know one day these will be valuable. Like someday I will understand this, but it's just like a collector's item, or almost. You're like, this has got to be good.
Oh, it is so true. It I love what you said. It belongs to you, right? Like my dreams are my dreams, and your dreams are your dreams. And I mean, over the years, I can't even tell you how many dreams I have texted you to say, "Help me figure this out," because it's so, I don't know, like the first thing in the morning to wake up and feel so vividly connected to some part of our psyche is super cool.
And it's erotic. It's erotic. You wake up with this presence, beauty, landscapes that leave you like as if you just had made love, in a sense, and sometimes you do.
Yes, so I love
it's like
that.
there's an erotic quality to, or sensual quality, that's sort of mysterious and ineffable.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Erotic and sensual and intimate, like incredibly, such a deep intimacy with our dreams.
Right. And it's pretty amazing that can generate that feeling of magic and of like mysterious love or romantic love. Like the fact that that's evoked or, generated is, so that has, there's someone knows what they're doing.
So cool. Totally. I love it. So, you and I love shadow work. We've talked so many times as friends about that, and we have different expressions of how we work with shadow work. But I was, as I was thinking about this and talking with you, like how would you explain to our listeners how our dreams can point us in the direction of our shadows, but even also reveal our shadows?
That's tough, because shadows, like what you reject about yourself, what you don't like about yourself, what you reject, what you disown. And so you literally, you exile this part of yourself because it's threatening or scary. And so when it comes back, you're like, well, what, you don't want that to come in.
Right.
But it's you, it's part of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the dreams in the beginning help to create a visual relationship with that.
So like, you mean if a part of you that I maybe consciously don't like or exile shows up in my dream?
It's easier to see it in someone else. Like it's easier to see it
right.
as, you dream of one of your friends, and that you're really, and it's easier to see that part that you don't like in a friend or an enemy.
Yeah.
Right. And so they might show up as a friend or an enemy in your dream, and you're like, that.
Amazing.
And that begins, if you can keep working with that, you realize, oh wow, that's really, my psyche is being very compassionate and generous to show me that, to ease it in, that's what's so beautiful about psyche to me, is there's a kind of compassion and pacing and patience. And it's, think about you dreaming your whole life, and whoever this artist is, they're thinking about the whole lifespan. Kind of like I
love that. I've never thought about that, actually, like the graciousness and the gentleness and the compassion that for like whoever created like dreams, like for that to show up in such a I have done, I can just speak for me personally, it's shadow work that's been pretty like, God damn it, it's in your face, like very, very young and very like in my face. And my dreams have, even if they're very intense or very, I don't know, if I wake up feeling uncomfortable or, threatened, there is a softness to that I've never thought about till you said it like that.
Yeah. Not a
awesome.
Different agenda.
And both can be beautiful, but like you said, I'm 44. I've been dreaming my whole life, and so I guess one thing I'm curious about is like, I have become more in touch with my dreams as I've gotten older and as I've done work with you, and had your guidance on dreams. But so what's the value of connecting more deeply with my dreams, I guess, would be the first part of the question. The second part would be, how can our listeners begin to connect more deeply or thoughtfully with their dreams?
Well, what I would say is to think about moments, because I like to say the dreams are the visible representation of our invisible life. So that we're just, so much of our experience is invisible and non-physical. And like we kind of cohere all of that into the sense of an I, Jonathan, Stormy, me, you, subject, object, and then everything else, falls to the cutting room floor. And so like, one way to identify that invisible experiences is through anxiety, through tension, through depression, through anger, all of these things that kind of bite into us in a non-physical way, but feel physical, but are kind of escape language and words. But so one way to have a relationship with that unconscious experience is through images. So you can kind of, whatever the block you're having, the tension, the fear, how would you describe it? How would you put it into an image? And that already is its transformation from unconscious to conscious. And then you're in the dream space already. And then
it's like the living dream space. Yeah.
And so then if you give it a form, an image, and then you kind of offering that in a sense to the unconscious that then responds through a dream. So you
Mhm.
learn, the value is you learn you're learning your own language.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It
by,
really.
by putting it into a dream, you're speaking the dream's language. You're speaking the language of the unconscious by putting it into image. And so you will then be able to see it in the dream. Like you're tagging
Cool.
it.
Yes. Yes. I love
And
it. Wait, so wow, I don't know. This feels like as long as I've known you, this feels like kind of revolutionary. We touched on it when you and I chatted about having this podcast episode, but so my life, I'm like translating my life, my living experience into my dreams, just as much as my dreams are informing my life. Am
yeah,
I understanding that right?
yeah, it's a pretty much two-way street, but like for the most part, it's a one-way street for people. For most of us that are busy lives, don't have time to have the conversation with
Mm,
their own unconscious. So it's
right.
like a dialogue,
Okay.
and it
And
wants
then,
to have the conversation.
so I love that. So embodying, envisioning, putting into an image some part of me. Let's say I'm just using anxiety as the example. Um, or like let's use one that's like my anger, right? Because it's like I disowned my anger for most of my life and now I fucking love her. But like, so as I like would put her into an image, I'm more likely to recognize her when she shows up in my dream. Am I simplifying it too much, or is that a good way to understand it?
Well, you're giving her form.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowing her to change and to come into a relationship with you, an embodied relationship with you.
Yeah.
And that means that she starts to come into you, into your conscious experience.
Right. Yeah.
So she's kind of maybe half in, half out, and you bring her all the way in, or maybe there's just a hand sticking out.
Depends on the day, I guess.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Awesome. So that you and I touched on like dreamscape, because I think of it, I guess, it's not my area of expertise, although I'm so intrigued by it. But when I think of it, I think of it as like a dreamscape, like this like magical, fabulous landscape, a dreamscape. And you and I talked about in my world, like I think I'm coining this term. I don't know if I am, but I think I'm like a sexscape. Like what's my terrain look like around sex and sexuality? And when we were chatting earlier, I'd love for you to kind of hear your beautiful insights on dreamscape, like sexscape, and sexscape, dreamscape, that same kind of two-way street, how they can inform each other, or how they do inform each other.
Well, I think it's the same scape because it's unconscious,
Mm,
right? So when we're having sex, it's like there's so much happening that doesn't necessarily fit in to words
mm,
and so that might show up in a dream, like as a certain. So if there is if it is like very crowded, I want to say the word crowded or something, like maybe your mother's there, maybe
mhm,
like that, but you don't have the time, the wherewithal, the words, and it's very embarrassing,
mhm,
and there's this all these cultural prescriptions of how the man should be in the bed and how the woman should be in the bed,
mhm,
and just that suddenly the dream, like you might have a dream of this very crowded scenario in a bed, and your mother might be there, or it
mhm,
might be in a subway, or
mhm.
there might be a flat screen, there might be,
Uh-huh.
and in which is so interesting. I mean, thinking about the pornography and flat screen and how that dimensionalizes the erotic, and the erotic has so multidimensional, and there's so many different invisible layers and experiences that as you slow down that that can start to have space,
Mm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
but it's only two people,
Yeah.
you know, and it's only, but is it, you know? And so there's so many thoughts happening. And so, you know, the dreams might personify that and animate that so you can see what is happening
Mm.
this 5 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, however long it is.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And it's so funny that you
And you
just
might have a
chose
lot
here.
of shame and
Yeah.
anger about that, and you don't understand why, and then you take it out on yourself or you take it out on your lover, and then but then so this helps to give context. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't, that's what I was feeling, you know.
Mm. That's like from what you're seeing in the dream. So that would be like the dream informing life, right? And dream informing sex. Like what did I, and it's so funny that you picked like an embarrassing sex dream, because there's like 4 really common types of sex dreams, which by the way, sex dreams, you already know, but are very common. And like, just to kind of normalize it for all of our listeners, like sex dreams are incredibly common. You know, there's so much shame around it, particularly if you're in a partnership and you're not having sex with your partner in the dream or whatever. But embarrassing sex dream is the number one most common one, having like an embarrassing sex dream. Some other common ones are like sex with your boss or sex in a public place, or, you know, but I think it's just, you know, I think it's what I hear you saying is like taking like what is embarrassing to me, like what's embarrassing, and then bringing that into the sex scape. The you said it's all, like, I love what you said, it's all the same scape, but bringing it into the, how do I talk about that with my partner? What's embarrassing to me if I'm in partnership, or just looking at it if I'm not, but what's embarrassing to me? Maybe it's acculturation, maybe it's messaging, maybe it's whatever, gender messaging, but what's embarrassing to me about sex? And like letting my dreams inform my dialogue, like letting my dreams inform my work in this realm.
Yeah, it's tools, it's language tools in a way. Like it's like it's almost having a kind of visual deck or visual aids to the conversation. You know,
Yeah.
it's helping you say, you know, it's helping you use metaphor and image to describe these feelings that don't fit into logics, or, you know, how we make meaning, and it helps to contextualize a very dynamic and complicated and, you know, charged relationship, I mean, experience.
Yeah. And both.
It felt like water. Suddenly I felt like I was drowning, or it felt like,
Yeah.
and you
Right.
know, so there would, you know, and there was, you know, who knows what else is.
And I love that, like, I think if I think about like the idea of escape, right? A landscape or a dreamscape. I mean, I think of both of those like incredibly tender for me. Like I think about them with like awe and wonder and magic and depth, and but the language giving me a whole new set of tools through my dreamscape, like through letting my dreams inform my life and my life inform my dreams. And until I never thought about that being a two-way relationship. I just thought, oh, I have these really wild dreams, and that's the direction it flows.
Mm. Well, it's like a topography, and topos means place. So, you know, and if you think about that, it's interesting, because like when you make love, or you're in a sexual experience, you're in a certain place.
Uh-huh.
You're in a psychological place, but it is a place that you go to, that, and the external may not shift, or it might have an atmosphere, might have a mood, it might, you know, it shifts sort of imperceptibly, but it's a place that's then informed by that place.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get the sense of a kind of terrain or topography that you're in, and that
Yeah.
helps, but that might get marginalized because you're in a bedroom, and like it was like we're so limited by the visuals that we're supposed to subscribe to, and yet
Yeah.
I'm experiencing a different kind of place, and it doesn't really add up to this bedroom, but the bedroom does become different. It becomes, more a Bedouin tent, or something.
For like the Super Bowl stadium or wherever it may be. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fabulous. Okay, so I could just talk to you forever. So if let's say, so when I asked about how our listeners could kind of more thoughtfully work with their dreams, like this is years ago, we've known each other for so long, but probably a decade ago, you were like, hey, Stormy, it might be helpful for you to, and I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was like not a dream journal, but it was like have something by my bed where I can like write down, because I mean, every morning I wake up and I'm like, whoa, those were wild dreams, like especially these days. But how can our listeners, I guess that feels like a tip or a tool. And I don't know if you still would recommend that, but like for, I think about it as like exercising the muscle to be more present with my dreams, kind of.
Well, one thing you can do is that as you're waking up with the dream is to play it again and put it on a loop, like to commit it to memory, repeat it, and try to put it into a image, into a visual like reminder, and repeat that. So if it's something happening around a tree, just remember the tree, commit the tree to memory, and then when you bring the tree back up in your waking day, it'll naturally bring along with it the rest of the narrative of the dream. That's one sort of really cool thing you can do. Another thing is, now with smartphones, you can go to your voice notes, and you can, if you wake up at 3 a.m, when sometimes these dreams are very present, you can have, instead of getting the mechanics out of the pencil and the pen and the light and the lamp, it's just, you just go to your voice notes and hit record, and you can even put your phone on really dim light settings so it doesn't disrupt, and just let it rip and wake up with the dream ready to go.
That's so cool.
And there's apps now that transfer that to text. Other thing I would do is be conscious, like sometimes every now and then you'll get a memory of a dream. It'll just flash through your head during the day, and just try to connect that to, wait, what might that be connecting to? What anxiety or feeling or fear or, and then, then go back to, and then it's because you're just starting to become familiar with this sort of deeper language in you.
Totally. Yeah. And that feels like exercising that kind of two-way, like, oh wait, I just thought of a dream. What's going on in me and externally that popped in right then? Like that's super cool. I've never done that until I get to do that. That's so cool. I mean, I get like, it's like I think about, but I also love what you said about the voice notes, because when you were saying that, I felt like almost like, I believe it was Albert Einstein who like he had some of his most brilliant ideas in that like hypnagogic state between sleep and wake. And I feel like if I'm recording what happened for me, just even like you said, just let it rip, then to listen to that again sort of is a little bit of a tether to that state where at least that's what the research shows, is like there's brilliance and creativity, because it's not so filtered, or I'm not sure, but.
Yeah. And another thing to do, just to, when you are experiencing sort of tough moments of anxiety or fear or blocks, to try and to just write it down, just describe what's happening to you without any judgment, without any filter, just what is the visual, what is the image, what is the metaphor, bringing that unconscious into your consciousness a little bit more, and that then will most likely activate a dream in which you can then better understand, it gives you more context to understand what that is. Why am I having that then? And that just begin. It's all about just beginning, having the courage to have this relationship with this other part of you.
And the other part of me is my unconscious. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's so funny. I love that you just intuitively said that, 'cause right before that, I just thought, I was like, oh, I want to remember to ask you. So if I were gonna like, this is we love this language, right? We're like deep in this work and we love this language. But if I were gonna like zoom out like 30,000 foot view, like why do I care about my unconscious? Like why do I even want to possibly work with it or learn from it or tap into it?
Well, for me, it's about the idea of the personality. And the personality is something that is non-physical, and it's invisible, and it's also uniquely human. Yet we live in such a visual and physical world that we don't have the means to actually interact with our personality, or to let it grow and let it develop. And so, and if you think about, the human being has been around for a long time, and so have the dreams, and the dreams are essentially this sort of living collective, like hard drive of the experience of the human spirit. And if you can, and the dreams are a way to be in touch with that non-physical, uniquely human part of ourselves that's invisible but yet very present to your experience. And I think when you really start to interact with that part of you via your dreams, you're really getting into what is called the soul. And so there's the trend. That's, for me, that's what's the value, is that you're transitioning into a kind of soulful or spiritual kind of, part of your experience that gives meaning, and that's been feeding the human, forever. And we see that through religion and poetry and art and mythology, that there is this accompaniment to the human story and the human struggle that's not just determined by the ego and this sort of visible, concrete understanding of the human experience, because you have this ineffable part of yourself, but then you're looking at your rug or your desk, and and so that starts to dominate the quality of how you understand yourself. It's very sort of one-dimensional, and then you live kind of hemmed in.
Yeah, so beautiful. I absolutely love that definition of why we even care about working with our unconscious. And you said about soul, and I can like really feel that in my whole body when you were saying that. Like for me, one of my passions in this world, in the world of sex and sexuality, is helping people find a deep connection to their soul, and then bringing that into sex, and letting sex bring soul into them. Again, that two-way street. But if I say soulful sex or sacred sex, most people are like, what the heck is that? It seems way too like church and state, keep them separate, whatever. It's like, and so I thought I love that when you and I were chatting earlier about using our dreams, like the same shadows that show up in sex show up in my dreams, at least for me, and the same shadows that show up in my dreams show up in sex. And so I'm just and yet both feel like really beautiful access points to soul, and challenging access points to soul, because that's really cool to think about. Wow, I could just go down the rabbit hole on that.
Yeah, I mean, that is I was just thinking of, as you were talking about that, just psyche, like psyche means soul in Greek, and it's, so psychology is the word or the logic of the soul. Psychology, is the speaking of the soul. And when you talk about sex and sacred, and you start going back in time into Greek mythology, into mythology of Psyche and Eros, and this relationship, between these divinities. And so it is the same topography, and it's all about what's happening to you now, whether you're having sex or whether you're on Zoom, so it's like this kind of kaleidoscopic human experience that's all, swirling around us.
And I just laugh thinking about, and then yet here's my desk and here's my rug. Like what you said earlier, like the limited part of that, and how that can, I think people could go through their whole life at this kind of surface level living, surface level dreaming, surface level sex. Like it's in it, and there's so much, I don't know, magic and fabulousness in the depths. And so, it's one of the things I most appreciate about you and our friendship is the depth, and that we call each other out on our shit and love each other through our shadows and for our light and all of it. But I think it's like that, I don't know, I guess it's an invitation to our listeners to be curious about depth.
And the depths are in the surfaces. That's what's beautiful about sex, is because you have a living surface of skin.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not
the
desk or the rug that is not, maybe living to some extent, but like this is the skin is this moving surface, is living surface. So then you think about the depth being just everything that comes along with that.
Oh, I love it. I mean, the skins is our largest organ. So like how incredible they have this like really large organ to like work, not just our skin. If we're having partnered sex, we have someone else's skin to work with too. That's an amazing metaphor. I'm totally gonna like have to think on that one for sure. That's awesome. Beautiful. Well, Jonathan, I want to make sure that we let our listeners know, how can they find you and learn more about what you do and even work with you?
Well, my website is thedreamsdoctor.com, plural, like the dreams doctor.com. And on Instagram, I do post a lot on Instagram, just sort of some of my own kind of meditations on this material, on dreams and depth psychology. That's the Dreams Doctor. And you can email me at dreams@thedreamsdoctor. I try to keep the dreams.
It's great.
going.
And I will put all of this. So dreams@thedreamdoctor.com.
dreams@thedreamsdoctor.com.
Okay, so plural and plural. And I will put all this in the show notes so people can find you. I can't recommend Jonathan enough. If you are wanting to work more thoughtfully with dreams, he's got an incredible methodology of working with archetypes that's pretty fabulous. So highly recommend you check him out. And thank you, Dreams Doctor, for sharing time and your brilliance and your insights and your love with us today. And thank you to everyone listening or watching today. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for being brave to love deep.
Thank you very much for having me.